Hola, mi gente. I'm Philip Johnson, and I am introducing the host of Uno Sols Chat, Brigida Toruño.
Thank you, Philip. Welcome, everybody, to Uno Souls Chat. We're so excited to have you here. And today we're going to be revisiting a chat that I did in April of 2020 with Cathy Norman, who's the curator of Imagine Wellbeing.
You know, in the chat, we go into these questions to ask yourself, which I think are really great daily reminders. And, I can't wait for people to hear what those questions are.
Yeah, Philip, I just really enjoyed chatting with Cathy so much. She is really such an Uno soul, a very special person. And she brought up these daily quarantine questions that we should all ask each other, and it's such an important thing to do even in what non-quarantine times, I want to say.
Exactly. I think it's very important just to remember those great daily practices that we used to get us through those beginning days. And, as we all know, the numbers are going up again, and there could be moments of, quarantining again coming up. So I think it's important to take those moments, breathing and just remembering and reflecting and planning for that. So yeah, I think it's an important time to listen to that again. And I know Cathy has works with an organization, Imagine Wellbeing.
That's right. Yeah, and that is really such a great organization here in Loudoun County, Virginia. It's a new 501c3 nonprofit organization, just really helping the community with different activities and to really help with the emotional and spiritual well-being. So they offer everything from guided meditations to nature walks to forest soaking. I mean, just some really, really good stuff, a lot of it out in nature, which is so important. If we're lucky here in the US that through COVID, we were allowed to go out for walks, not so much the case in other countries, but really to go out in nature is just so renewing, to take that breath of fresh air and the activity for our bodies. It's just wonderful.
I think this idea of forest soaking, honestly, I hadn't heard that phrase before. And, but I think it is something that is very rewarding. And if you live in an open space or if you live in a city and can find a larger park, I would really encourage people to do that. And if you haven't heard it either, you'll find out when you listen.
That's right.
But the great thing about Imagine Wellbeing is they've also adapted, and they have, Zoom capabilities. No matter where you are listening from and watching, you can check it out.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I can't wait to listen to Cathy's chat again. Thank you
Yeah,
so much, Philip, for
let's get right into it.
okay. Thanks a lot. I am so honored to be chatting today with Cathy Norman, an Uno Soul. And she is the curator for Imagine Wellbeing here in Ashburn, Virginia. Hello, Cathy. How are you doing?
I'm good, Brigida, on this beautiful Earth Day with the
Yeah,
sun outside, and yet at the same time, I'm on the journey, as all of us are, to manage the moments that come during this time of struggle for all of us.
that's right. Yeah. And how are you coping? Can you please tell us some of your coping skills during this time?
Well, part of what I have the privilege of doing with Imagine Wellbeing is creating a community, what we call a mindful community. And most recently, we are sending out a resource we call Compassionate Hope, Mindful Community for Difficult Days.
Mm.
And it's an incredible community of people that gather around mindfulness, meditation, finding community, uh, safe community with a commitment to values of compassion and wisdom, service, and um, really unconditional love,
Yeah.
and for ourselves and others. And so it's been a great privilege to journey with this community over really the last 4 or 5 years. We offer free mindfulness and meditation classes, a yoga, with a focus on the ancient tradition of yoga, hatha yoga, with a focus on meditation. For some people, it's very much a spiritual journey. And then the nature element of being contemplative or meditative in nature. So all of those practices that we've been teaching have been a real gift to me in these days. And so especially I think the Zoom meetings, and then the being out in nature. We have the privilege of living in a beautiful spot that we actually use for meditation and mindfulness up outside of Bluemont, Virginia. So
Yeah.
just being out there and allowing some of the grief and sometimes anxiety to just be held by, the natural world. And for me, that's deeply spiritual.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful, Cathy. And um, how long have you had Imagine Wellbeing?
Well, it started through a process we call human design thinking about 9 years ago, the concept.
Okay.
And a community, a spiritual community, a faith community in Ashburn, Crossroads United Methodist Church, a group of people who had dear friends and family who weren't interested in organized religion, or had some reason where they didn't feel welcome, or it wasn't their path. um, that this group of leaders felt like we needed to listen to ways to be in community with deeply spiritual people, or people who have values that they wanted to cultivate. And so we went through a process of listening. We did an interview process. The IDEO, the Bill Gates Foundation, has used IDEO. So we went through a formal process of listening for what people are yearning for in their lives, and to help them deepen a sense of their own presence, inner presence. And so we heard out of that interview process 4 areas: meditation. People were stressed. They needed to learn to calm down. So meditation was important. Being out in nature was where people felt more peaceful and calm. They knew that their lives were just like a hamster. They almost like on a wheel. And they really felt spiritual, oftentimes most spiritual in nature. And then having safe community where people could explore questions, interspiritual questions, people who were secular, or that they were wanting to explore deep values that were important to them. And so we designed some prototypes and launched and found what we're drawing people, and everything's volunteer. We have 2 very part-time staff members. I'm part-time staff, but I'm primarily volunteer. Most of my hours are volunteer because it's a great joy. One of our values is altruism, or generosity.
Yeah, yeah, you are a very compassionate, kind-hearted person. I just admire you so much. And I know that I probably attended some Imagine Wellbeing events maybe for the last 6, 7 years. And I just love every single thing that you've done. I participated in some of
Well,
the
one of the
hikes.
things, Brigida, yeah, the hikes or meditation workshops, the people who come like you are really the teachers. I mean, there's guides, but the beautiful gift is I've seen that light in you and recognized it the first time we were together in that deep commitment you have to meditation. I didn't realize how many years you've been practicing, but what a
Yeah,
gift.
yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for those words. Yeah, 27 years.
Mm.
Now you touched on something. You mentioned grief,
Mm.
and I've been thinking a lot about that, how we are going really through this pandemic, a time of universal grief, it seems to me, um, that's around the globe. And so I looked up the 5 stages of grief,
Mm.
by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and I'll just name them. And I thought, maybe we can chat a little bit about it. I'd love to get your thoughts around that, and um, kind of like, oh, well, where are we? What stage are we? And even
Mhm.
asking that question isn't fair, because um, I think we all can go up and down,
Mhm.
those stages. But the stages that she mentioned were first denial,
Mm.
and then anger,
Yes.
and bargaining,
Yes.
and then depression, and then acceptance.
Yes.
So I would love to hear your thoughts around that.
Well, she was just such a gift and a pioneer in grief work, Dr. Kubler-Ross, and um, what a gift to recognize those things in ourselves and in our friends and family members. For me, her work has been incredibly important. Um, Having, in 2007, I lost, my father died from suicide. He had
Oh,
struggled with depression his whole life. And um, I think each of those stages, to be able to recognize, when you talk about bargaining, as we all moved into the reality of this pandemic, it's really necessary that we go through those stages. And to me, kind of the foundation for all of them is self-compassion.
mm,
And when we find ourselves, it's part of mindfulness is being awake to what's happening inside of us and in our thought process, and with compassion, without judgment.
mm,
But the bargaining, I certainly experienced that myself. And I think
mhm,
it's a very normal response um, when we've lost control of, whether it's our health, our capacity to, travel around, be with people and do the things we're used to doing. So that bargaining really, I found myself, well, maybe if I do this, this won't happen.
yeah,
And so compassion. Um,
yeah,
and then
absolutely.
anger. It seems like our culture, and I think for, you know, political figures to be responsible is very important. Um, but that anger at sometimes can be, um, it's important to honor it, but to be able to move through that anger and not let it get attached. Sometimes it's easy to let that anger, you know, we get it attached to directing our anger somewhere. And then that's not helpful. It keeps the cortisol, the stress hormones, just continuing to, anger is there to protect us. So it's good. Um, and I missed denial at the beginning, but I think all of us were like, it's over there. um,
Yeah,
And
yeah,
we couldn't look till we got to the point we couldn't look away. Um,
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
and the depression, there's two kinds of depression. There's chronic depression and situational depression.
Mhm.
And honestly, Brigitte, I don't know about you, but there's been some days that when I've seen images and I had to limit the news, everybody says that limit. I tried to find out what we could, Dave and I, my husband.
Mhm.
Um, but I've recognized some situational depression, like, oh, this feels like situational depression. And I
Mhm.
have gone back and slept. Now, this hasn't happened in the last 2 weeks, but the first couple of weeks, I
Mhm.
took naps.
Yeah.
And that can be a sign of, it was okay. I also recognized my body was dealing with all of these things, almost like a trauma from what we know. I'm a registered yoga teacher as well, about how our body responds.
Yeah.
Um, but the stages coming to acceptance, um, like you said, I think we move in such unknown and uncontrollable circumstances among those stages.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah. And I definitely relate to the situational depression, and um, I've been working hard on recognizing and honoring my emotions and
Yeah.
whatever it is that comes up. And you know, I get sad sometimes, and it's like you said, maybe I've just had too much stimulation from looking at the news or
Mm-hmm.
my feed, and so I feel sadness, and so I just say, okay, hello, sadness, I see you. And my tears are flowing, and I just allow them to flow. I don't stop them, because it can be scary to cry. Some people, I think, feel, if I start crying, I'll never stop,
Yes.
and that can be the sensation. But what I've learned, and in the hard way, is that I let those feelings sit in the palm of my hand, and I say, it's okay, sadness. I see you. Sit here. I
Yes.
welcome you. Let's have a cup of tea together.
Yes.
And of course, that's just a playful way of saying, sit for a minute, because I know that it's not permanent.
Yes.
Emotions are impermanent. So
That's
if
right.
I look at them instead of pushing them away, then they're gone. And so then I feel like, I take a deep breath, and I'm okay. And I realize that that comes with practice. It's not
Yeah.
something that can necessarily happen overnight, but to have the awareness of it, I think, helps to understand that, yeah, let that anger in, or the sadness, and it will go away.
Indeed, and I love the palm of the hand, welcome sadness, and that that container, or that, when I had mentioned compassion and self-compassion, there's so much in our mental rumination or thoughts that are self-judging, and having emotions or having tears, like you said, I've got to reject this, or I don't want to cry too much, or it feels like I'm not going to stop crying, as you said, Brigitte.
Yeah.
But the gift of really compassionately welcoming what it means to be human, it's so sacred. And
Mhm.
it is such a gift to welcome what I would call the soul.
Mhm.
Um, and that is, the mind, the body, what we call the heart or the spirit, and to allow the soul to emote and to honor, whether you write, whether you go out into nature and lay down. I've laid down on the grass when it was sunny about 10 days ago,
Yes,
and I just felt so held, like by Mother Nature. And I
absolutely.
was feeling some sadness and thinking about, the death and loss and people being alone. And I allowed that emotion to come. And I also begin to feel a sense of consolation, that, a sense of being held, and a sense of the warmth of the sun, easing and renewing my
Yeah.
heart.
Yeah, that's beautiful,
Knowing
Cathy.
there's a love, and whatever name, or if that the universe, if it's a universe, is not something to be feared. There's suffering
Right.
as part of being human, but it can be
Yeah.
a sacred gift to be in community. I love the Uno Souls. I love what you're doing with this, Brigitte, in
Oh,
your
thank you,
heart. And
Cathy.
I'm so
Thank you.
grateful you're going to serve on the Imagine Wellbeing guide team to, as we're all listening together, all of these different ways to
Yeah.
be
Well, I'm
that
honored.
compassionate presence in the world.
Thank you. I'm honored that that you would want me on that team.
Mm.
I'm yeah, very honored to be working with you, who's such a light in our community. And I the other day I woke up and I hadn't left the house in a couple days because I have the asthma and allergy as well. So even walking in nature, I have to
Mhm.
be careful. But I was just like, I've got to get out. So I put everything, it was still chilly. And so I put my hat on and my masks. I put
Mhm.
two on, and I went out and it just felt so good to be out there and breathing the fresh air with my mask and feeling the sunshine. And then I came across a tree and I've walked around, past this tree many times, and I just felt like it was calling out my name.
Yes.
It's right by a lake, and so I walked up to it and I leaned against it, my back against it, and I just felt like it was hugging me. I mean, the branches were in such a way that that's what it felt like I was snuggling up against this tree. And it
Yes.
felt so good because it was such a reminder of being grounded. And it was such a reminder of what the trees go through,
Yeah.
that there are difficulties that they go through and that they're swayed, sometimes really roughly by the wind, and
That's
yet
right.
they always stand tall and proud and persevere. And so that it felt so good on so many levels to have found that tree.
What a beautiful practice. We do something called forest soaking. I guide, and a couple others guide forest soaking experiences. And, in our ancestral stories, people were very close to nature. Our great, 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 great grandparents, and before that. And the connection to the cycles of life that the natural world teaches us, and on Earth Day it's especially important to remember that there is the tree is and we've learned it's part of an ecosystem that they used to think, biologists used to think, that trees competed, but what they're realizing, that a forest is dependent on diversity, and they're interconnected through mycorrhizal, they're like, I think I'm saying the word correctly, like the fungi, or what we call mushrooms, but underneath the soil, they're connected with the tree roots. They connect to each other and they support one another. And that process of pruning, when there's a bad storm, there's pruning. So
Mm.
the branches, we live among a forest, and we have ice storms and heavy winds, and I'm like, oh, that tree that lost a big branch. And yet it's just incredible how the resilience, exactly like you said, the rootedness and the flexibility, um, and then the interdependence. So having community that has this shared value, I think is very symbolic. and and actually I hug trees, and I know that's become a political statement, but again, I think it's deep within our DNA.
Yeah.
deep
Yeah.
to connect to the natural world and to recognize the circle of life, the seasons of life. There's much to teach us about the suffering and the essence of renewal in that suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. You shared with me a beautiful article, and it's talking about daily quarantine questions.
Yes.
And I just think that this is so important. It's they're very easy questions to ask ourselves,
Yeah.
and it just helps us to center ourselves, I think, and be
Yeah.
grounded, right?
And this has been something really helpful. I mean, this is one of the ways that I have been doing the meditation and some yoga at just in the midst of all the tasks I'm trying to accomplish. But yes,
Yeah.
I have them here and I know you have them. So maybe we
Yeah,
could take turns reading them.
that's a great idea. Yeah. Do you want to start?
Okay.
Okay.
This comes from Greater Good Science Berkeley, which is a wonderful site. And I think Brigitta's going to post this right on Facebook.
Yes.
Highly recommend Greater Good Science.
Mhm.
So the first one is, what am I grateful for today? And the abundance that gratitude can bring, and it changes the brain and the body. You know, there's science to all these practices as well. So
Yeah.
gratitude. And you know, today I just woke up and I was so grateful for this red maple uh, that's turning. It's an ornamental maple, and it's just the sun's coming through it. And
Uh,
I just keep looking back at that and soaking in that.
yeah, that's great. Yeah. And the second question is, who am I checking in on or connecting with today? And so this is a great question, because I do have family and friends that I check in on regularly. And I mean, even my daughter and my son, who um, they are married and have their own families, and so I like we do Zoom calls to make sure that that we can see each other at least. I,
Sure.
I do I do miss the hugs, the
Mhm.
grandbaby hugs, but I'm definitely reaching out.
Very important. And I think connecting with intention to friends, and you know, we do at Imagine Wellbeing, we have lots of opportunity for people to connect in that way, but
Mhm.
that is really important. What expectations of normal am I letting go of today is number 3. So we could all go on about that, but you
Yeah.
know, just with compassion, all of these are, you know, being compassionate, because I want to hold on to, you know, I was looking at my toilet paper supply and I haven't been to the store in like 3.5 weeks, and I'm like, it's gonna be okay. Let go of the normal and know there's enough, and there is enough. We just are going to figure out when our next grocery run's going to be.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah. And number 4 is, how am I getting outside today?
Mhm.
Yeah, we just talked about that.
Yeah, yeah,
I with the allergy, it's being allergy season. I am careful, but I definitely sometimes, even if it's just walking out on my patio and taking a deep breath.
yes,
But yeah, I definitely am called, I mean, just really loudly and reminded to get outside.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other is, how am I moving my body today?
Mm.
And that's, you know, I have found we had some technical problems with some of our Zoom meetings. And one day I found myself like, I think I was working on my laptop for like 5 hours. And I'm like, oh my goodness. You know, I went to the restroom, but to intentionally move my body, you know, to bend, to stretch, to take my arms, to move them up into the air. Whoop. And to move your shoulders. We carry a lot of tension, and do that with compassion. You can do, but just being aware of moving. That's part of that.
That's great. And then the last one is, what beauty am I either creating, cultivating, or inviting in today? Whoa, this is a great question, because to me, it's like that creativity. And I've always told myself, my story was that I'm not a creative person. I saw my mother as this musician, this artist, and I've never felt like I could reach her level. But I realized that I am creative in my own way. No comparisons or self-judgments. And so I do have like an adult coloring book, which I enjoy bringing out every once in a while. I've been doing a lot of writing, right? And so that's being creative.
Beautiful.
I do write a little bit of poetry. And so, I definitely have an awareness and again, a calling where it's like, do something creative. And it could be listening to music. I've been dabbling a little bit with my keyboard and my guitar, and I love to drum. I love my djembe drum. So so I've been doing some Zoom drumming circle, attending some. So
nice.
So definitely, these are great questions. I can't wait to post them and get them out so people can also be thinking about it and hopefully be able to apply.
Love it. And I would like the link to that Zoom drumming circle.
Oh, okay.
Beautiful. Even just going out and picking a yellow dandelion and putting it in a little vase or laying it somewhere and really taking time to look at the yellow and the intricate beauty of those little flower pebbles. We think, oh, it's a weed. But it's an incredible ray of sunshine in these days.
Right. You're right. You're right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Cathy, for chatting with me. You're just such a light and a delight to speak with. And I wondered if you could leave us with some words of wisdom.
Well, I think the most important thing that I could leave saying, and I share it with myself, is to celebrate, invite compassion for yourself every day. And when that happens, when you're able to be more compassionate with yourself and allow, and all the things we've been talking about as part of being human, what a sacred gift it is to be able to identify with others and their suffering and to have concerns for our loved ones. That's all normal, and for our own health. But when we receive that compassion, we become a more compassionate person. And that's how the world's changed, Brigitte. All the great wisdom traditions, all the spiritual traditions teach us those deep values. And to me, compassion is central. Yeah. So I see that in you, dear one. As we say in, yoga, namaste.
Namaste.
And to all our friends.
Yes,
the light in you, honors the light in you.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Stay safe and stay well, my friend.
Thank you, dear one, and you and your friends as well. Looking forward to more to come.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Uno Souls Chat. You can find us at www.unosouls.com and on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I would love to hear from you if you would like to chat with me. Have a beautiful week and see you at the next episode.